Sequel number 43 of the Church of Uganda at 150 years, a celebration of our history. This is the producer, Christopher Amos Chikomeko Ntambi. Welcome. In this sequel, we are going to welcome Bishop Taka, this time not as the Bishop of Eastern Equatoria Diocese, but as the Bishop of Uganda Diocese. So, welcome. Bishop Taka was back at Town, where he learned of the death of Pilkington and the Nubian mutiny. Despite the fear, he simply sent in more missionaries. And to make matters worse, through Kenya, he sent Hubbard, he sent the education expert Hartley. He also sent Force Jones, Maddox, Ecob, Borup, and Roscoe again. In January 1898, the Namirembe School of Divinity had opened with students such as Edward Bakayana, Thomas Senfuma, Nuwa Chiwafu, Shadrach Chigula, Chibuka, Cyrus Aliwonya. And lessons had begun being conducted in what was called the theological hall. Bishop Taka, who was preparing to leave Mombasa for good, had one more last project there, the construction of a church on Mombasa Island. Remember, I told you earlier, Town was on north coast. Especially, he wanted that church to cater for the Uganda rebuilding expatriates. It was constructed in only 4 months, and it was named the Huntington Memorial Church. Meanwhile, the group of missionaries who he had sent, despite the civil war or the mutiny, when they had passed through Kenya, arrived in Busoga in March 1898. Remember, by this time, the mutiny was over. The Nubians had ran away into the swamps of Kyoga, so there was a lull in the fight. Now, they supervised the exhumation of the remains of Pilkington, but the area was tense. Yeah, the area was very tense. They had to do everything under guard, and actually it was in such a tense situation that missionary Hubbard was shot by mistake and he was injured. Yeah, he was carried all the way to Mengo in a hammock, but he failed to recover and he died later in March 1898. However, the remains of Pilkington were reburied at Namirembe on the 18th of March 1898. Now, in March 1898, Bishop Taka began to make the farewell visits to Eastern Equatoria. He went to Rabai, said goodbye. He went to Mombasa Island, said goodbye. And finally to Town, his former headquarters, which was now to become the headquarters of the Diocese of Mombasa, which had no bishop because no one had been appointed yet. He bid them farewell. He could not wait anymore for London to nominate anybody. He had to go, and so he left for Uganda on the 24th of March 1898. He used the Kenyan route because it was the shorter one. So, and the war, the Nubian mutiny, had come to an end. Now, on the 12th of May 1898, he reached Busoga, where he found Weatherhead in charge. He took a boat to Ngogwe Mission, where he was received warmly, and he confirmed 124 candidates. Then on the 18th of May 1898, he reached Namirembe, and on that day, Namirembe's mission church became a cathedral of the new Uganda Diocese. Why? Because the seat in which he sat as bishop, for the first time on that day, 18th of May, the seat in which he sat as bishop inside the mission church transformed the whole church into a cathedral. The seat itself became a cathedral It was his throne now. That is the first time that Namirembe got a cathedral. The same building transited from a mission church to a cathedral. It is therefore a day to celebrate. It was a day to celebrate. 18th of May, 1898. On the 21st of May, 1898, some captured 9 Nubian mutineers were publicly hanged after being found guilty of high treason against the British authority. So yes, we know that during Idi Amin's time, criminals were hanged or shot dead at Sawaya Queenie, but here are the British. They are hanging mutineers in publicly hanging people. So let it be known, it was not Idi Amin who began this, the British began it. 21st of May 1898, 9 Nubian mutineers were publicly hanged after being found guilty of high treason against British authority. Because of the heavy rains of the month of May, the bishop's welcome was not as warm as in the past, but he had a lot of work. For example, in the first 3 weeks, he confirmed 772 candidates in the various missions. He was surprised to find out that the Nubian mutiny had affected the congregations by scattering them in many areas. Remember the recruitment of former military faction soldiers who had actually settled to do other things were now being asked to go back into the army to fight. So there was a lot of disturbance during the mutiny time. On the side of Mwanga, remember he had escaped from Germany, custody in Bukoba. He had fled into Budu with Gabriel Chintu, but on arrival there, he found Gabriel Chintu was in jail also. Gabriel Chintu did not escape. It's only Mwanga who escaped because of the relaxed mood in which he was kept in prison. So on arrival in Budu, he found that all the soldiers had been taken away to fight in Jinja, so he could not recruit anybody. He could only recruit a few people, a few soldiers. So those are the ones he fled with to Bunyoro. On reaching Buganda, he crossed over to Tonya and to Hoima. There he was told that the Uganda Kabarega was on the run. The British were also looking for him, and he had run towards Masindi. So his soldiers crossed in the bush because he didn't want to be noticed by the colonialists. And he crossed the Nile, and he was able to be told that Kabarega was in the swamps of Lango, yes. And there he found the fleeing Nubians, and they had arms, they had firearms. And he was able, therefore, to get a lot of ammunitions from them to be able to repel any pursuers who were after them. Now, on the other side of Bishop Taka, or before I go to Bishop Taka, there is a small, interesting document I found at the National Archives of Uganda. It was a letter. The deposed Mwanga II smuggled a letter to Apolo Kaggwa, who knew his handwriting perfectly well. It was dated 18 September 1898. Mwanga was informing Apolo Kaggwa that he was about to flee to the Arabs, since the routes were all right. He accused Apolo Kaggwa of abandoning him and stated that he had no doubt that given a chance, he would betray him to the British. Mwanga then mocked Apolo Kaggwa by saying, "Enjoy the good clothes, enjoy the roads, enjoy the British, but remember that generations would never be the same," whatever that meant. He requested Mwanga II. Mwanga II requested that Apolo should give him a reply, but that if he did so, he would then write to him again another letter to narrate the entire suffering he had gone through. Now, Apolo Kaggwa did not write a reply. He simply sent the messenger away. Apolo Kaggwa was angered by the deposed Mwanga II later and wished for his arrest. He indeed used spies to follow the messengers of Mwanga II. The messenger was so stupid to simply return directly to Lango, and that confirmed to the detectives and the colonialists that Mwanga and Kabarega, actually Mwanga, not Kabarega, they were convinced that Mwanga, therefore, was hiding in the swamps of Kyoga. Anyway, Mwanga II, with those arms of the Nubians, resumed fighting, skirmishes here and there. They one time reached as far as Chaka, where they got big numbers of Nubian fighters in northern Bunyoro. And actually, that's where he found the deposed Kabarega in the country. And he joined him in the offensive against the British. Now, in as far as Bishop Tucker was concerned, having arrived back home and now ready to begin pastoral work within the Diocese of Uganda, it was time to embark on his pastoral journeys. But for tonight, we shall not visit immediately, but let us give a background to one of the very early visits that he was going to make. In 1896, curiosity made Apolo Kaggwa, who was in Toro, to climb on top of Mount Renzori. Now, on top there, he saw on the other side of the mountains a black country with forests, and he was told it was called Mboga. He asked the Christian Missionary Society of Toro to allow him to go to Mboga, where he found the Banyamboga people. How did he do that? He had to cross River Semliki. And when he arrived in the Mboga area, he was received by the Mboga king, who was called Tabaro. Slowly by slowly, he was able to learn the language in bits, and he immediately started teaching them the gospel of the living Jesus Christ, of the living Christ. The gospel challenged their cultural life, so some of the Banyamboga resisted the gospel. But he persevered, and Christianity began to spread in Mboga area. So when we next see the bishop visiting Toro, because that is going to be his pioneering pastoral visit after becoming, or after the Namirembe Mission Church becoming a cathedral and having a local cathedral, the first pastoral visit was to Toro. But basically that is the background, because we shall see when he reaches Toro, he will also cross over to Mboga. There ended this sequel. May the good Lord bless us all.